My name is Emma Harper. I'm 32 years old, and I spent 5 years building a flawless reputation at Westbrook Marketing Agency in Chicago. 2 hours ago, my manager Karen Donovan fired me in front of my entire team during our Thursday morning meeting. She didn't pull me aside privately. She didn't give me a warning. She just stood up, pointed at me, and said those 2 words that shattered everything I'd worked for. "You're fired." My face burned as 20 pairs of eyes stared at me in shock. My hands trembled as I grabbed my coffee mug and laptop bag. But as I walked toward that conference room door, something hard and cold settled in my chest. This wasn't over. Not even close. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss the next one. Every share helps these stories reach someone who needs to hear them. Let's keep the conversation going. The conference room went silent when Karen stood up. We'd been discussing the quarterly campaign results, numbers I'd personally delivered ahead of schedule. I was mid-sentence, explaining how our social media engagement had increased by 47% when she cut me off. "Emma, stop talking," she said, her voice sharp enough to slice through steel. I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry." She walked around the table slowly, deliberately, like a predator circling prey. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Pack your desk and leave the building within the hour." My stomach dropped. Around me, my colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. They just stared, some with pity, others with relief that it wasn't them. I felt my throat tighten. What? Why? What did I do? Karen's smile was cold and practiced. "Gross misconduct. That's all you need to know." I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand explanations, to call HR, to fight back right there. But my voice wouldn't come. Karen stood there, arms crossed, waiting for me to break down. Instead, I stood up slowly, keeping my face blank. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "Fine," I said quietly. I picked up my things and walked out, feeling every eye follow me. The door clicked shut behind me, and suddenly I was alone in the hallway. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my laptop. Gross misconduct? I'd never even gotten a warning. I'd won 3 major clients in the past year alone. My performance reviews were perfect. This didn't make sense. Unless it was never about my performance at all. Back at my apartment that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment, trying to understand what I'd missed. 2 years ago, when Karen first became my manager, things had been different. She'd seemed professional, even friendly. But slowly, I'd noticed changes. She took credit for my ideas in meetings. She assigned me impossible deadlines, then acted surprised when I met them anyway. She smiled to my face while undermining me behind closed doors. Last month, I'd overheard her talking to another manager. "Emma thinks she's so special," Karen had said, laughing. "But she's replaceable. They all are." I should have seen this coming. I should have protected myself. Now I was jobless, humiliated, and completely blindsided. My phone buzzed. A text from my coworker James. "Are you okay?" Nobody understands what just happened. The first week was brutal. I spent most of it in my apartment, cycling between rage and despair. Every time my phone rang, I jumped, hoping it was HR calling to say there'd been a mistake. It never was. My savings account stared back at me from my laptop screen, showing exactly 3 months of rent if I was careful. I applied to 20 jobs in 4 days. Most didn't respond. The ones that did wanted references, and I couldn't exactly ask Karen. On day 8, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Emma Harper?" A woman's voice, professional and warm. "This is Diane Fletcher from Coleman Consulting Group. I saw your portfolio online. Are you available for a conversation?" My heart jumped. Coleman was huge, one of the top marketing firms in the Midwest. Yes, absolutely. When? The interview happened 2 days later in a sleek downtown office. Diane Fletcher was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and direct. She asked about my work at Westbrook, and I answered honestly, carefully avoiding the details of my termination. "Your portfolio speaks for itself," Diane said, studying me carefully. "But I have to ask, Why did you leave Westbrook so suddenly? I'd prepared for this question. Creative differences with management, I said evenly. I'm looking for an environment where results matter more than office politics. Diane nodded slowly. We value results here. But this position isn't glamorous. It's project coordination. Lower title, lower pay than what you had before. Are you willing to step back to move forward? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Because I understood something Diane didn't say out loud. This was a test. And I intended to pass. I started at Coleman the following Monday. The office was smaller than Westbrook's. The team leaner and hungrier. My new role was technically a step down. I coordinated projects instead of leading them, supported campaigns instead of designing them. My paycheck was 30% smaller. But I didn't care. I watched everything. I learned the systems, the clients, the internal politics. I stayed late, arrived early, and delivered flawless work on every single assignment. Within 3 weeks, Diane pulled me into her office. You're overqualified for this position, she said bluntly. Why are you really here? I met her eyes. Because I'm building something. And I'm patient. She smiled. Good. Because I'm about to make you an offer you'll want to hear. That's when everything changed. Diane explained that Coleman had just acquired a struggling division from a larger agency. The division needed a complete overhaul. New strategy, new leadership, new energy. I want you to lead the turnaround, Diane said. It's risky. If you fail, it reflects badly on both of us. But if you succeed, you'll have proven yourself in a way that matters. I didn't have to think long. What's the division? Diane slid a folder across her desk. I opened it and froze. The logo on the first page was painfully familiar. Westbrook Marketing Agency. My old company. The division Coleman had acquired was the exact department I'd worked in. The department Karen still managed. When do I start? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Diane's smile widened. 2 weeks. And Emma? Karen Donovan reports to you now. I spent those 2 weeks preparing like my life depended on it. I studied Westbrook's recent performance reports, and what I found shocked me. After I'd left, 3 major clients had dropped the agency. Project timelines were consistently missing deadlines. Team morale, according to anonymous employee surveys Coleman had conducted during the acquisition, was at an all-time low. Karen had been coasting on the momentum I'd built, and now that I was gone, the cracks were showing. I made notes. Lots of notes. I wasn't going in angry or vengeful. I was going in prepared, professional, and completely in control. On my last day before the transition, Diane called me into her office again. Remember, she said carefully, you're not there to punish anyone. You're there to fix what's broken. Can you do that? I nodded. I can. My first day back at Westbrook felt surreal. I walked through the same glass doors I'd been escorted out of 6 months earlier, but this time I was wearing a visitor badge that read Coleman Consulting, Leadership. The receptionist who'd watched me leave in shame now smiled nervously and directed me to the executive floor. I'd never been to the executive floor before. The conference room was full when I arrived. 15 people, including Karen, sat around the long table. Karen's face when she saw me was worth every sleepless night. Her mouth literally fell open. Her face went pale, then flushed red. What is she doing here? Karen demanded, looking at Diane. Diane smiled pleasantly. Emma is your new regional director. She'll be overseeing this division's integration into Coleman. You'll report directly to her. The room erupted in whispered conversations. I saw James trying to hide a smile. I saw others looking confused, uncertain. Karen stood up, her chair scraping loudly. This is ridiculous. She was fired for misconduct. She can't possibly. She was fired without cause, Diane interrupted smoothly. We've reviewed the circumstances thoroughly. There was no documentation, no warnings, no legitimate grounds, just a termination. She looked directly at Karen. Which is why Coleman's legal team is reviewing potential wrongful termination concerns. But that's not today's focus. I finally spoke. I'm here to help this team succeed. That includes everyone in this room. Karen sat down slowly, her jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. I pulled out my laptop and began the meeting. Professional. Calm. in complete control. The first 2 weeks were tense. Karen barely spoke to me, communicating only through curt emails when absolutely necessary. She tried to maintain her authority with the team, but I could see the power shifting. People who'd once deferred to her every word now came to me with questions, ideas, problems. I didn't gloat. I didn't mention the past. I just worked. I rebuilt client relationships Karen had damaged. I streamlined workflows she'd overcomplicated. I held one-on-one meetings with every team member, listening to their frustrations and concerns. The stories I heard made my blood boil. Karen had created a culture of fear, taking credit for others' work and blaming them for her mistakes. But I kept my anger hidden. I documented everything carefully, professionally, because I knew the truth would speak louder than any accusation I could make. One night, I found myself thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The humiliation of being fired publicly, the fear of losing everything I'd worked for, the anger that had burned in my chest for months. But I also thought about the lessons. I'd learned that success isn't just about talent or hard work. It's about resilience, patience, and knowing when to step back so you can leap forward later. My mentor from my first job had once told me, "Don't fight fire with fire. Lead with excellence." At the time, I hadn't fully understood. Now I did. I wasn't beating Karen by being cruel or vindictive. I was beating her by being better. By showing up every day with professionalism and results. By proving that real leadership isn't about power plays and fear. It's about earning trust and delivering value. The turning point came during a major client presentation. Westbrook had been trying to win back the Anderson account, a 7-figure contract we'd lost 3 months after I left. Karen had insisted she should lead the pitch. I'd agreed, wanting to give her a chance to prove herself. It was a disaster. Karen's presentation was disorganized, her data outdated, her strategy uninspired. I watched the Anderson team's faces grow increasingly skeptical. Halfway through, the client interrupted. "I'm sorry, but this isn't what we're looking for. We need innovation, not recycled ideas." The room fell silent. Karen stammered, trying to recover. Then Anderson's CEO spoke. "Actually, I'd like to hear from Emma Harper. I worked with her before, and I trust her judgment." Everyone turned to look at me. Karen's face went white. I stood up, walked to the front, and delivered a presentation I'd prepared as a backup plan. I spoke for 20 minutes, laying out a comprehensive strategy that addressed every concern Anderson had raised. I showed them data, projected outcomes, creative concepts that would set them apart from competitors. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Anderson's CEO smiled. "That's what we've been waiting for. You have our account." The Westbrook team erupted in relieved applause. Karen sat frozen in her chair, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Back at the office, Diane pulled me aside. "You just saved a 7-figure contract," she said. "The board is impressed." I nodded, feeling the weight of what had just happened. I'd proven myself in the most visible way possible. And Karen had watched the entire thing unfold, powerless to stop it. After the Anderson win, the team's attitude toward me shifted completely. People who'd been cautious and distant now sought my advice openly. They stayed late to work on projects, not because I demanded it, but because they wanted to. They felt valued, heard, supported. Things Karen had never given them. I started noticing small rebellions. When Karen gave an order, people would glance at me first, waiting for my approval. When she tried to take credit for a success, someone would correct her. Actually, that was Emma's strategy. Karen's influence was crumbling, and she knew it. One afternoon, she cornered me in the hallway. "You think you're so smart," she hissed quietly. "But you're just lucky. This won't last." I looked at her calmly. "Karen, this isn't about luck. It's about leadership. And you had your chance." I walked away, leaving her standing there alone. I spent the next month systematically documenting every problem in the division. Not to attack Karen specifically, but to build a case for the changes we needed. Missed deadlines, lost clients, employee turnover rates, budget overruns. The data painted a clear picture of mismanagement. I presented my findings to Diane and Coleman's executive board in a formal review meeting. I didn't name Karen directly. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. This division has been underperforming for over a year, I explained, showing graphs and charts. But the talent is here. The potential is here. We just need better systems, clear communication, and accountability. The board asked tough questions. I answered every single one with data and solutions. By the end of the meeting, they'd approved every recommendation I'd made, including a complete restructuring of the management team. Karen must have sensed what was coming because she went on the offensive. She scheduled a meeting with Diane, claiming I was biased against her, that I was sabotaging her deliberately because of our history. Diane listened patiently, then asked Karen to provide examples. Karen couldn't. She had complaints but no evidence. Meanwhile, I had 6 months of documented success. Diane ended the meeting quickly. Emma has been nothing but professional, Diane said firmly. If you have concerns about her leadership, document them properly and we'll review. Otherwise, I expect you to work with her, not against her. Karen left that meeting furious and desperate. That's when she made her final mistake. She tried to go around me directly to one of our biggest clients, pitching a strategy without my approval or knowledge. The client called me immediately. What's going on? We thought Emma was leading this account. I had to do damage control quickly. I called the client, apologized for the confusion, and presented the actual strategy we'd developed as a team. The client was satisfied, but the incident had crossed a line. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I scheduled a meeting with Diane in HR. I laid out what had happened, showing the emails, the timeline, the client's confused response. This isn't about personal conflict, I said carefully. This is about someone undermining the division's success and damaging client relationships. HR reviewed everything thoroughly. They interviewed the client. They checked company policies. And they came to a conclusion. Karen had violated multiple protocols. The following week, Diane called an emergency team meeting. Karen wasn't there. I want to inform you that Karen Donovan is no longer with Westbrook or Coleman, Diane announced. Emma Harper will continue as regional director. The team's reaction was mixed. Some people looked relieved. Others seemed shocked. James caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod of approval. After the meeting, several team members approached me privately. Thank you, one woman said quietly. I was planning to quit before you came back. You saved my career here. Another person added, Karen made this place miserable. You made it feel like a team again. Their words meant more than any promotion or raise could. I'd set out to prove myself, to show that I was better than the person who'd fired me. But somewhere along the way, it had become about more than that. It became about building something good. About creating an environment where talented people could thrive instead of survive. That night, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Not because Karen was gone, but because justice had been served fairly. She hadn't been fired in front of everyone. She'd been let go professionally, with dignity, even though she'd never shown me the same courtesy. With Karen gone, I focused entirely on rebuilding the division. I promoted talented people who'd been overlooked. I brought in fresh perspectives. I created mentorship programs and transparent communication channels. Within 3 months, our client retention rate went from 68% to 92%. We won 4 major new accounts. Employee satisfaction scores doubled. Diane called me into her office one afternoon with an unusual expression on her face. The board wants to meet with you, she said. About what? She smiled. They want to expand your role. You'd oversee 3 divisions instead of 1. It's a vice president position, Emma. You'd be the youngest VP in Coleman's history. I sat there stunned. 6 months ago, I'd been fired and humiliated. Now I was being offered an executive position at one of the industry's top firms. I accepted the promotion, but I made one condition. I wanted to use part of my new budget to create a workplace rights initiative. Too many people in this industry face the same unfair treatment I had. Sudden terminations without cause, hostile work environments, managers who abuse their power. I wanted to change that. Diane approved immediately. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need, she said. The day my promotion was announced, I received dozens of messages. Congratulations from colleagues, clients, even competitors who'd heard the story. but one message stood out. It was from Karen. Just 2 words, "Congratulations, Emma." I stared at those words for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part recognized it for what it was, an acknowledgement, maybe even a hint of respect. I typed back carefully, "Thank you. I hope your next chapter goes well." I meant it. Not because I'd forgiven everything, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. Looking back now, I see the journey differently than I did when I was living through it. When Karen fired me, I thought my career was over. I thought I'd failed. But that moment of humiliation became the catalyst for something greater. It forced me to prove myself in ways I never would have otherwise. It taught me resilience, patience, and the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge would have been destroying Karen deliberately, making her suffer the way she made me suffer. Justice was simply being better, doing the work, leading with integrity, letting the results speak for themselves. Some people think success is about never falling down, but I learned it's about how you get back up. It's about turning your worst moments into fuel for your greatest achievements, and it's about helping others along the way. 6 months after becoming VP, Coleman hosted a company-wide conference. I was asked to give a keynote speech about leadership and transformation. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I felt the full weight of how far I'd come. I told them my story. Not in detail, but the core truth. I was fired once, I said. Publicly, unfairly, and without warning. It was the worst professional moment of my life. The room was completely silent. But it taught me something crucial. Your worth isn't determined by one person's opinion or one company's decision. It's determined by what you do next. I talked about resilience, about professionalism under pressure, about leading with excellence instead of ego. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, dozens of people approached me with their own stories of overcoming workplace injustice. I listened to each one, understanding that my experience wasn't unique. But maybe my response could inspire others. Today, I lead a team of over 200 people across 3 divisions. The Workplace Rights Initiative I started has expanded into a full program that's changing company culture industry-wide. Young professionals reach out regularly, asking for mentorship or advice about navigating difficult workplace situations. I tell them all the same thing I learned. Stay professional. Document everything. Focus on results, not revenge. And remember that setbacks are just setups for comebacks. I still think about that conference room sometimes. The humiliation of being fired in front of my peers. The burning shame. The crushing fear. But now I also see it as a gift in disguise. Because that experience stripped away everything I thought defined me. My title, my reputation, my security. And in rebuilding from nothing, I discovered what I was truly capable of. I discovered that I didn't need Karen's approval or anyone else's validation. I just needed to believe in myself and do the work. If you're reading this and you've experienced something similar, being fired unfairly, humiliated publicly, or betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know something. This isn't the end of your story. It's just a chapter. A painful, difficult chapter, but not the final one. You get to write what comes next. And you can write it with integrity, professionalism, and determination. You don't need to become cruel or vengeful to succeed. You just need to be better than the circumstances that tried to break you. Stay patient. Stay smart. Keep your standards high and your integrity intact. Document your achievements. Build real relationships. Deliver results that speak for themselves. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's success. It's becoming the leader you wish you'd had. It's proving that kindness and competence can win over politics and power plays. 6 months ago, Karen fired me in front of everyone. Today, I'm her boss, not because I schemed or manipulated, but because I simply refused to let one person's cruelty define my worth. And if I can do it, so can you.